good mental health only be possible for people who can afford the right care. Burnout is the final step. It's not the first thing that happens. It's the last thing that happens when your body is shutting down, essentially. So there are things that you can do to look after your mental health. There will be more setbacks than not, especially in the beginning. And I think that if you are looking at embarking on an entrepreneurial journey, your biggest tool is going to be self-confidence and self-belief. You're the one that believes in what you're building, and it's up to you to convince everybody else. And that's the biggest challenge with entrepreneurship.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Female Founder Stories, Women at the Top, Told by a Teen. I'm Sia Kantaria and I'm taking you behind the scenes of entrepreneurship, hearing about the grit, the setbacks and the breakthroughs it takes to build something real, in a way that makes you think, I could do that too. What if your biggest challenge became the start of your biggest idea? That's exactly what happened to Sheena Pirbhai, a two-time exited founder who's now building her third company, Stress Point Health, a mental health tech business inspired by her own experience of burnout. She's turning setbacks into solutions and showing how personal struggles can spark businesses that change lives. So Sheena, welcome to Female Founder Stories.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So can you take us right back to the beginning of your journey and tell us what made you decide to turn something so personal into your next business?
Well, it was around 20 years ago. I just graduated from Cambridge. I was studying law and economics in a degree called land economy. And just directly after I graduated, about a month later, I was still in Cambridge and I was riding a bicycle and I was run over by a lorry. And it was a moment that, I faced my biggest fears. I didn't know what would happen. I was in hospital for a year, but nobody really talked to me about my mental health during that time. So after I recovered from my physical injuries, I started a job in investment banking. Well, investment banking plus PTSD was a recipe for disaster. And after 2.5 years, I had a total mental breakdown. And I spent a year in recovery for my mental health. And it was at that time that I really started to understand my mind, my body, what the power of emotions, what emotional regulation is. But I wouldn't really do anything with that until over 10 years later. So in that 10 years, I built and sold two companies, the first in finance, the second one in tech. And I knew that my third company was going to be in mental health. And I really wanted to bring what I had learned and how I had overcome my mental health struggles. I wanted to bring that to everybody in an accessible way. And that's what prompted me to start Stress Point Health and how we've grown the company today.
It's really amazing as well that you took something really challenging for you in a real personal experience and try to help everybody else, because often everyone struggles with issues, but they never think, they just deal with it themselves and they never think, what's the next step? How can I now help other people too?
Yeah, I think it's deeply personal for me and passionate for me because I believe that mental health is still a growing problem, exacerbated by COVID, but also just the general increased pressure of life, social media, which I know affects young people a lot. There's so much more bombardment to our senses. And I think that whilst at the same time, accessibility for mental health solutions is getting worse, whether that's through the NHS or otherwise. I knew that I was in a privileged position when I was recovering, that I was able to afford private care. I was able to afford, my parents paid for my psychiatric sessions and all of my care. But that's not true for the vast majority of people. So why should good mental health only be possible for people who can afford the right care? And this is really where I wanted to ensure that we created something really accessible and scalable.
And I also really think that mental health is just as important as physical health. I mean, having a sprained ankle versus a really bad day, they can be two things that affect you in the same way in terms of being able to do things productively. And what advice would you have to teenagers who maybe struggle with their mental health or finding things difficult? Maybe they're not sure about what to do. but they just feel like they just need to crack on with their day and carry on doing what they have to do.
I think it's universal, whether you're at school, university, or working. This idea that you need to just persevere and crack on and get on with it. And I think it's really unhealthy to feel that way because suppressing emotions or suppressing the way you feel, I always liken it to like a hot coal. The further you push that hot coal down, the harder it's going to burn. And until you actually try to deal with that hot coal and try to make it less hot, that's the only way it's going to have less of an impact on your body and on your brain and on your mind. And so for me, it has to be incorporated into our daily lives. Small steps that prevent things from becoming bigger things. I always say in the workplace, burnout is the final step. It's not the first thing that happens. It's the last thing that happens when your body is shutting down, essentially. So there are things that you can do to look after your mental health, small things, daily practicing. I do think that journaling is a really important part, or at least just writing down and connecting with how you feel. Then you start to see patterns, you start to see different trigger points, you start to see things that you can potentially control to help balance things a bit better and not let things build up. And I think that understanding the impact of emotions is a really important part of being a teenager that often teenagers don't connect to. Because I think we're told that, oh, emotions are bad, or oh, it's just your hormones. Actually, emotions underpin everything from our nervous system to our cognitive function to our ability to concentrate and make the right decisions. And learning to regulate and understand that, I think, is a key step for anyone in when they're looking at how to improve their mental health or balance their mental health.
I completely agree with that. And I also think that given that during school, even once you go to university, often you're stuck in your room revising for exams. And that's a really crucial time where often you feel quite isolated and your emotions sometimes can get the better of you. So it's really useful to be able to understand your emotions and also journal them, as you said. But other than emotions, in your actual business, once you kind of got past the point of saying, okay, I'm passionate about this and I really want to build this, what were some of the setbacks that you had and how did you overcome them?
It's a great question. And I think anybody who's an entrepreneur or who's built a business will tell you the same thing. There will be more setbacks than not, especially in the beginning. And I think that if you are looking at embarking on an entrepreneurial journey, your biggest tool is going to be self-confidence and self-belief, because there will be so many people who say no along the way, or they don't believe it, or they don't think it's going to be a success, or you're not the right person for it, that without that self-belief, it will become really crushing. And also, one of the key things that should drive a business forward is, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? And if I've identified that problem, do the people who I believe have that problem think they have that problem themselves? And if so, will they use that solution? And so many entrepreneurs that I mentor, especially women and younger people, they come up with incredible ideas. And you think, wow, that's amazing. Like, if that really is a problem that needs solving, go for it. But then when they go to the market and they tell the market about their idea, they're like, well, yeah, it is a problem, but it's not something that I'm going to change or spend the money to change beyond from the status quo that I have right now. So problem and solution go hand in hand. Is there a problem that I'm building this solution for? But is that solution needed by the market? This is the key fundamental. And I think whatever you're doing, whether it's, a lemonade stand in front of your house that you're selling to your neighbors, or you're building an AI business that's going to service large corporations, it all still comes down to this fundamental fact. The lemonade stand example, if it's a rainy day and people are not thirsty on that day, you're not going to do well, no matter how delicious your lemonade is, no matter how the recipe is unique and it is the best lemonade that anyone's ever tasted. They're simply just not going to be walking past your stand to be able to buy it. So that problem solution element is the cornerstone of entrepreneurship. And anybody who's embarking on that journey should really be looking and understanding what it is that they're building and why they're building it.
Thank you. That was so interesting. So you've talked about the challenges that you face and also how problem and solution go hand in hand. What is unique about your journey in terms of being a woman? Because obviously this whole podcast is targeted at female teens and also female entrepreneurship.
I think being a woman has a number of unique challenges. Obviously, in the funding arena, there's lots of statistics around how only or less than 3% of female-led businesses get funding, which is a really quite depressing statistic, if I'm honest. And that's a key challenge. As you build a business, getting venture capital funding or getting different types of funding is definitely harder if you're a woman. There's some really interesting research around that. Harvard did a study where they had a man and a woman present the same investment proposal to a panel of men and women to see who would get the most investors. And interestingly, the man definitely got more investors than the woman, but even from the women on the panel. So there's definitely unconscious bias within investing and looking at companies towards men and not women. I think the other challenge, particularly in technology, I chose two industries, finance and technology, which are quite male dominated. You are facing that question of credibility, of can you do it? But more than I think the external, I think as women, we are much more self-critical of ourselves, where we underplay our talents. Imposter syndrome is more prevalent amongst women than men. And I think that's often the challenge. We're our own worst enemy. And I think if I'm giving advice to the teens that are listening to this podcast, it is that again, it comes back to that self-belief. Have that belief that you are worthy, you are good enough, you are just as good as your male counterpart, no matter what anybody might tell you or how you might feel from certain setbacks that you'll face along the way. And that, I think, is a really tough place for girls and girls going into adulthood, how to navigate this idea that men just seem to get more traction, more attention, more funding, and that's the reality of the statistics. But and one thing I'm always aware of is not ensuring or not making that a calling that, oh, I'm a woman and therefore that's not why it's happening. There's also a balance to strike within that. And so I'm always very clear, and I have been in my career, that I will not let that hold me back. But if there is a setback, I won't blame it on the way the market perceives me. I will continue to push forward. I will continue to have that self-belief, and I will continue to create companies that people want to work for, want to be a part of, and products that people want. And I think that has held me in good stead through my career, and that I've just felt that it doesn't matter why I got rejected. If I did, there will be plenty of people who believe in me and believe in what I'm building. And that's certainly been the lesson with Stress Point, that the personal nature of it, the passion, the lived experience has really resonated with people and helped us grow the company.
I also really resonated with your point about imposter syndrome, and not just that I can see that in my female peers, but also like a fear of failure and rejection. I think that often we think of those as negative things, but actually they almost always turn out to be positive things because they kind of help you learn in your journey. I mean, I guess that's what entrepreneurship is. It's not just you start off with some highs and lows and then you're soaring. It's like there's always it's a roller coaster journey.
It is. It's very up and down. And the thing is that it takes a certain type of personality. And I think one of the biggest myths about entrepreneurship is that it's, just start a business and just do it and it'll grow and it'll happen. in the same way that lawyers are a particular personality, doctors are, finance people are, artists are, to be an entrepreneur does require a certain personality. And I think it's really important to ask yourself if you have that temperament to build a business or to be an entrepreneur, because it is lonely, it is difficult, and it is, as you exactly quite rightly said, it is a roller coaster. It's up and down more than it is linear, up linear one way or the other. So I think it's a really important point, and there's no shame in potentially saying that I don't think that's for me. But it's important to learn that and understand that early on in your journey. Otherwise, it will be even more difficult than it already is.
I also think that although you said that it is lonely, and I can kind of see that because obviously you're working for yourself, there's no one to really report back into, and there is a team, but there's not really like you're more directing the team and helping them to figure out how things are going. I do think though that one thing that's really unique to entrepreneurs is there's such a great community. So although everyone's alone, it's almost like everyone's connected because there are these like amazing communities such as like Female Founders Rise or so many others which connect entrepreneurs and make them feel like, wow, there's a real community here and more of a team.
Yes, you're 100% right. That's new, and I think that's come up particularly since COVID. I think where we were all looking for community. When I built my first company, there wasn't a lot of networks like that. And I'm so happy to be a part of those networks. I think they're invaluable. I think a lot of them also offer mentorship for young entrepreneurs who want to understand what it's about and understand how they could potentially enter that world. So you're 100% right. There is a lot of community out there and a lot building, which I think does help to stem this feeling that you're on your own. But I think the loneliness part of it sometimes is that you're the one that believes in what you're building, and it's up to you to convince everybody else. And that's sometimes the biggest challenge with entrepreneurship. And then, the self-doubt can creep in.
Yeah, I think self-doubt is something you've voiced really clearly in this episode about how important self-confidence is. Like, you have to believe in yourself. And I think that's a quality that I can see just from us talking that you definitely have, and it's very inspiring. And going back to now your business, so what are the next steps for Stress Point Health, and what are like the goals that you're aiming to achieve and you're targeting?
So we've spent the last, 4 or 5 years clinically testing our product, doing research, publishing research, because one of the non-negotiables for me was ensuring that our product had data and clinical evidence to back its efficacy. So this was really important to me because there are a lot of mental health apps out there, and there's a lot of mental health platforms, and we wanted to ensure that we had that clinical validation. So now for us, it's about getting it into the hands of the people that need it. So we opened an office in the UAE. We're expanding across the Middle East. We work with healthcare providers. We work with corporates for their employees. We work with mental health clinics. So now really we're in that phase where we've built the product, we've tested it, we've made sure it works, we've published the research, and now we want to get it into the hands of the people that really need it. So this is our current plan, and we're building what we call the commercial pipeline. So all our customers that we want to get on board and get people using Sphere.
I definitely think, every single step of entrepreneurship is so important. Like, even though, yeah, you built the product and that was a massive important step, now it's the marketing, which is another, again, really important step. But that sounds amazing. And Stress Point Health and Sphere sounds like it has a really bright future ahead of it. And I'm sure lots of people are going to use it because there is a real need. And so you've done all these, you've built 2 businesses, you've grown personally so much, but now what does success mean to you?
Great question. I think success for me is about how many people are using and benefiting Sphere, not from a commercial standpoint, but from impact. I think now, yes, there's a commercial side to our business, but I'm also equally invested in ensuring we have an impact. We work with charities and NGOs to give away our tech for free, and that's all about impact. So as much as the commercial generating revenue and making profits is important, it's only as important as the number of people that we can reach through the impact side of our business. So that to me is success. This is my life's work. I want everyone to be able to understand the power of emotions, to be able to understand how they can really improve health, and for everyone to be able to access some way of getting that help. So that's really what I'm aiming for now in this part of my career.
I mean, it's been so interesting to hear everyone's different versions of success, and some people's is really focused around social impact. And it's amazing to see that there are people still, willing and like really passionate about helping society, because a lot of people have kind of just given up. So thank you on behalf of everyone. And thank you so much for joining. I have learned so much, and I'm sure the audience has too, not just about self-confidence and really not doubting yourself, pushing through, showing that you can turn personal kind of issues, but something that you're really passionate about, into a business that's helping so many people. And also that to everyone listening, if she can turn struggle into innovation, then you can too. So see you next time.
Thank you.